should have told you all to do this in advance. It's all education, protocols, how we behave, you know. Anyway, I've said it now, so take it as you will. So who's going to introduce the show here?
Good morning, everyone. We are so honored and thrilled to have Venerable Robina here with us today. I know everyone was a little disappointed that she's not here in person, but Venerable Robina has said that she has some time in January. So she and Don are working on coordinating that. Venerable Robina is an integral part of the FPMT. I think most people here have seen Venerable Robina before, but she's an amazing being doing things for sentient beings all over, everywhere. And we have been so fortunate to have her visit us in the past. And we're looking forward to her teachings and words of wisdom today. Thank you so much for being here, Venerable.
Mm-hmm. Happy to be here. Doing my job. So what's our topic, please? I need to know what's going on. Tell me what to do, what to talk about, please.
It's the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion.
Okay, so we've done one section already, haven't we? No?
Yes, Venerable Robina, last weekend.
Okay. Okay, so, everybody. So first we just have our motivation. We think the Lamas would say set our motivation. I think we might say state our purpose, state our goal. It's a good way to put it. You say, what's your motivation? Like you go to the shop to buy your ice cream. What's your motivation? You think it was a bit weird. What are you talking about? It means what's your goal? What's your purpose? What are you doing? What are you doing this for? Why are you going? And then that's what motivation means. So of course we're here with the actual action we're doing is sitting here together on Zoom, listening to some teachings, which I'll be saying, but I'm listening as well. So that's the actual action of listening to the teaching. But then we think, well, why are we doing it? You know, you're walking on the street, you're going for the ice cream. So here we're listening to the teachings. Why? This is the motivation part, because we're interested in hearing the Buddha's views about how to live our lives, how to develop, in this case, the two wings of the bird, how to develop the wisdom wing, meaning to put ourselves together to become this marvelous person that Buddha has found from his own experience that we've all got the potential to become, which means free of all the nonsense, free of ego and nonsense and attachment and depression and anxiety and fears and drama. And then on the basis of this, able to help others, the compassion wing. It's the entire path, basically, you know. And so if we're thinking we're going to listen to all of this, to take some tools from it, so we can develop this marvelous potential, so we can be of benefit to others. Put it like that, you know. So the wisdom wing is like you get the benefit for yourself, but it also qualifies you. It's like it qualifies you to help others. A bit like if you decide, I want to help people, you know, become more healthy, you've got the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. Well, the compassion wing is I want people to be more healthy. And what happens in our life, we often rush off and think, oh, I must help people become more healthy. I want to help people, but you've got to know how first. And that's the wisdom wing. You got to put yourself together first. You've got to know the techniques for how to be healthy. You've got to learn nutrition yourself. So you're the beneficiary, but it qualifies you to help others. It's exactly the same here, you know. You've got to understand at least theoretically how to liberate yourself from suffering, and then you can help others. That's the idea. So we think for this reason, we listen to these teachings. Do we have the prayer up there? Nana, you're the Zoom person. Let's put the prayer up. They're the words, roughly speaking, and now we can express it in this prayer. In the first two lines, the next prayer. The next one, no, not request. We don't need to say that. Refuge and bodhicitta, that one. The next one down. Can you move the document to the next prayer? Why doesn't it move? What's the problem?
I think it's just moving a little slowly.
It's not moving at all.
Just a little glitch. Please bear with me.
So make it a bit bigger for us. please. We can read it, not 4-point for old eyes. Not the page. That's better. Yeah, that's better now. Okay. Okay, so this is expressing roughly what I said in the before, the second 2 lines, but the first 2 lines are expressing our reliance upon the Buddha and his teachings. So we can just sing this in Tibetan. This is the meaning. Sangye chadong soke chognam la jangcho padu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye chadong soke chognam la jangcho padu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye chadong soke chognam la Jangcho Baru Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shok. Okay. So if we've okay.
Can we have a mandala, Venerable?
No, that'll do. So if we that'll be we can imagine we've offered a mandala to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. Visualize the whole universe and happily offer to the Buddha requesting the teachings. Think in your heart that just there like that. Okay, so this if we've at all familiar with this Tibetan Buddhist path, and if we're we know this thing called the Lam Rim, the stages of the path, is where all these teachings are presented. But the crucial point is they're all presented in an orderly way. Just like any body of knowledge, you decide you want to become a carpenter, you don't go to grade 7 carpentry class first. You go to grade 1. It's sort of obvious, but we're not used to thinking this way with the spiritual path. We don't quite comprehend it. But this is really what it is. And so then what are the components then of the first stages of the practice? Well, last time we did the essence of the first part. We know that this Lam Rim is divided really into 3 essential kind of stages, the most basic, the intermediate, and the advanced. And I always kind of sounds corny, but I always like to use the analogy of our ordinary education system. As His Holiness says, Lam Rim it's like the education system. You've got junior school, high school, and university, or whatever we call them, different things, but essentially that. We get that concept. Well, it's the same here. So then the first thing, the essence of all the stages of the very first stage, the most basic, the entry level. It's all about, we talked about this last time. It's all about how to live according to good ethics. Basically, it's that's the ground, the foundation of our practice. So then you ask, well, what's that got to do with anything? So then that means we have to understand what the goal is here. If you know you're going to study carpentry, you know what that means. You want to study music, you know what it means. So here, what's the goal here? There you want to graduate as a carpenter. You want to graduate as a cook or a musician. Well, here we want to graduate as a Buddha, an enlightened person, enlightened. So what's that? And in order to understand the first stages of the practice, you've got to know what the goal is. Otherwise, you're very confused. So the goal is to become a Buddha. And this is deceptively simple. If we look at I always quote this, it's very, very helpful, but it makes it deceptively simple, but it's clear. Look at the meaning of the word, the etymology. Look what's inferred, what's implied by the syllables in this word Buddha. And the same in Tibetan, Sangye, I think. Sangye. The first syllable implies the eradication from our mind of all neuroses, all ego, all fears, all depression, anxiety, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, and the root neurosis of all called ego grasping, the one that, all of that. We'll get into this in a minute. Today, this will be our time. Then the eradication of this. Now, that already sounds pretty shocking. What do you mean? You mean we're capable of getting rid of all ego, all fears, all depression, all anxiety, all jealousy? It's quite shocking already just hearing that. But let's say we even take it on board as a possibility, then we have to obviously ask the question, well, why? Why would we want to get rid of this? Because actually in our culture, we assume you're a normal person has some of this, and that you'd be kind of weird if you didn't. So it's a bit of a shock to hear this, but this is the point the Buddha's making. This is exactly what he's saying. This is, in a way, this is the accomplishment of the wisdom wing. That's it. Having found, so in other words, another way to put it is you've identified the suffering and its causes. Because another way to put the entire goal of being a Buddhist is to be free of suffering and its causes. Another way to put that, which sounds more delicious, is to be full of happiness and its causes and to understand it. So the Buddha is telling us that the mind, what goes on in the mind is the cause of all suffering. We haven't got to that point yet. That's in like high school, middle school. But that first syllable already is quite shocking, and it tells us that's the so then the second wing, the compassion wing, that's implied by the second syllable, the complete the full development in our own mind of all the virtues, all the wisdom, all the goodness, all the clarity, all the joy, all the happiness, all the goodness, all the virtue. In a way, that's the accomplishment of the compassion wing. Put it like that. That's Buddha. So if that's the end result, you know, if you don't know what a carpenter is, you better find out. Then you know the stages. You know what a cook is. Here, this is the result. You becoming like that. So clearly, straight away, if that's what we can become, we better look at what it is that is preventing us from becoming that right now. And that's where the work is, you know. If you want to become a carpenter and make that magnificent table that you see the picture of, you better learn to see what it is in you, if you like, that prevents you from doing it, and then learn the methods, learn the skills. Exactly the same here. So the very first level of practice then, which is really, I mean, the Buddha's telling us that the mind is the problem. He's saying this in what he's just said. We can fully develop, get rid of all the rubbish and develop all the goodness in the mind, Then if the mind is the problem, but we've also got another problem, the mind is conjoined with body and speech. So the very first level of practice is all about controlling our body and speech, all about harnessing the energy of our body and speech. And that's what ethics is. Ethics is about how you behave, you know. It sort of sounds boring. Oh, you know, mother tells you to behave nicely. It's got massive meaning. It's all of the essence of the very first level of teachings is the teachings of Lord Buddha's teachings on karma, the law of cause and effect, this natural law. And we talked about this last time. So the thing to remember, okay, what confuses us here is, you know, if we look at this, and it's very similar to anybody who's got decent ethics, a good communist, a good Christian, a good, you know, your next door neighbor, they'll tell you, well, you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't lie, you should not harm others. They'd say like that. I mean, you shouldn't misuse your behavior to harm others. So immediately we hear that as to do with compassion. But what's interesting here is, no, not yet. The main reason that this is at the very first level of practice, and this is the part that really is hard for us in the West to get, is that Buddha's telling us in the law of karma that what we do and say and think, that's the process that produces us. Forget what it causes us to do to others, whether to make them happy or to help them or harm them. That's not the main point yet. The main point is Buddha has found from his own direct experience that the main boss in our lives is ourself, our behavior, our words, our actions, and our mind. So the very first level is to harness the energy of your behavior, your body and your speech. And the obvious, the evident beneficiary of this is oneself. This surprises us because we think, oh, that sounds very selfish. You mean I shouldn't kill for my sake? I shouldn't steal for my sake? Well, yes, Buddha's saying exactly that. And that's what the renunciation means. But we can't hear this. We just hear it as moralistic. Oh, I shouldn't kill, naughty person, you know, because I shouldn't harm others, because I don't want to harm others. No, not yet. This sounds very shocking, but not yet. And this, I think we truly miss this part. So I want to talk about this more deeply. We've gone through the law of karma. We've talked about it, and we all know this, and we've been around these Buddhist centers. We've heard this 1,000 times, but we don't get this real point. The beneficiary of the wisdom wing is oneself. The direct beneficiary of the wisdom wing practices is oneself. And all of this is all the nuts and bolts of Buddha's teachings. Learn to understand impermanence, learn to understand karma, learn to understand about the mind, the delusions, what this is, what that is, all the nuts and bolts of the wisdom wing work, which are the techniques that we would then utilize to help us develop our own amazing potential. They are all expressly for our benefit. As Lama Zopa says, of course, if you refrain from killing and stealing and lying, which is so that you don't sow negative seeds in your mind, which will ripen as your future suffering, of course, the rats and roaches right now will get the benefit. They'll be very happy because they'll have a party because you leave them in peace. But it's not the express reason yet. We've got to get this. We've got, in other words, this whole first stages of practice, the wisdom wing, is really about developing renunciation, recognizing what suffering is, and Buddha lays it out very clearly, the 3 levels of suffering, recognizing that you are sick of suffering. You've got to have that. You've got to be fed up with suffering. You're suffering. You've got to have that. And then you've got to recognize the causes of it and then want to practice them because you are sick of suffering. That's the meaning of renunciation. Not just some holy feeling. It's about you. There's got no discussion yet about compassion. We mix them all up in a big soup, you know. Compassion is the second stage of practice. Just like if you want to go out, rush off, you know, you see all the world out there and they're all unhealthy. Everyone's obese, eating the wrong food, getting sick. And you do have compassion, but you've got to go, well, how can I help them? You've got to know about it yourself first. You've got to go leave sentient beings alone. You've got to put your head in the books. You've got to start understanding food and nutrition, and you have to practice it. And the reason you want to practice it, yeah, long term, sure. But the first one is you've got to recognize your own suffering, how your lousy habits cause you to have suffering. And for you to really be energized and want to practice nutrition, you have to be sick of suffering. You have to be fed up with it. Then that is the foundation of your compassion. No question. So I think we miss this a lot. When we do the purification practice, for example, you know, about karma, we purify, we do the 4 opponent powers. And the very first one is regret. And then, you know, you check. I mean, the commonest answer when we ask, well, why am I regretting that I've killed? Why do I regret that I've lied? Now, we always say, because I have compassion for others, because I harmed others. Not yet. Not yet. You have to first have compassion for yourself. And that's really the Buddha's way of saying compassion for yourself. But we find this hard to see because we don't have much confidence in karma. We just hear it as moralistic, you know, or only having a result on others. We never think of it to do with the results it brings to oneself. We don't think of karma in this most intimate, internal way that it's about producing you. This is really huge, you know, so we've got to talk about it more, I think. We just don't get it. Even in most advanced practitioners, people who teach Buddhism, we still don't get this one properly because we don't think it, but we don't hear it the way Buddha teaches it. We don't hear it the way the Lamas teach it because we don't understand it. It just sounds moralistic. It either sounds moralistic and we feel guilty, or we hear it as about compassion, you know. So we've got to understand what causes me suffering, and we've got to know, but crucially, you've got to identify the suffering. And this is what's difficult. So what's suffering? And in a way, the suffering is gone into more detail in the middle scope, in high school. Let's look at that one now, which is about the mind, because the mind is the source. The body and speech are just the servants of the mind, you know? They're just the servants. They do the wishes of the mind. Yes, the hand does the harm, you know, and the foot does the harm. It stands on the ant and kills it, but the mind is what made the foot do it. The foot is just the servant of the mind, you know. But karma is about body and speech. It's about the servants. It's about controlling the servants. All vows are about behavior. They're not about the mind. All the karmic one, sure, the 10 non-virtues that Buddha teaches, you know, the first 3 are control, refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from jumping on the wrong partner. 3 main actions of the body that harm others. And they're driven by anger or attachment, aren't they, you know? Then they've got 4 of the speech. And this is a major way we harm each other. We mightn't go around raping and killing too many people. We all badmouth, say words that are not true. We don't even know we're lying half the time. We just make up rubbish. We just talk speculation. We're living in conspiracy theories half the time. We don't even know what we think that is true. Or we say harsh words and abuse people, or we speak bad things about people behind their back, which we love to do, you know? So we do so much harm with our speech. And then the last 3 of those 10, which is really Buddha's initial advice to anybody who wants to think about being a Buddhist. These are his 10 list of 10 don'ts, you know, his recommended. They're not vows, they're just recommendations before you begin to take vows. And the last 3 are about the mind. But they're mainly at least harnessing the grosser level of the 3 poisons. You know, grosser level of attachment is that constant, intense craving, never stopping, always dissatisfied, always craving for more, never satisfied, extreme levels of craving, like being a junkie or overeating or whatever, or jumping on people, you know, 10 times a day, or watching your video game 7 hours a day or something. You know, that's the grosser level of craving that harms you. It's so clear. Then the grosser level of anger is like that. You know, we all get angry. It flares up, you know, then we calm down. But if it doesn't calm down, that becomes you become malicious. You want others to suffer. That's heavy duty. That's really heavy duty level of anger, you know. And then the third one is a grosser level of ignorance. The root delusion ignorance, marigpa, the one that clings to the I. There's other levels of ignorance, but the grosser level of ignorance is really what we understand in the world. It's like this fundamentalism, you know, black and white, right and wrong, absolute. You're right, you're wrong, I'm right. All the fundamentalism in the world, we see it. And don't just think it's religion or philosophy or politics. It's all of us. We've got that tendency. I'm right. We can't see past our own nose. This heavy duty level of ignorance. At least of the 10 non-virtues, this little list of 10 don'ts at the very beginning, we at least begin to harness that level. But the emphasis in karma and on vows is about first controlling the body and speech. Why? We've got to ask that question. Why? Yes, they are actions. This is the thing about, okay, this is the point. It's got to be clear. We have to ask the Buddha, you know, he talks about negative actions and positive actions. It's pretty straightforward. A negative action and a positive action, a non-virtuous action and a virtuous action. It's fairly simple. It almost seems almost too simple, you know. There's only a third category, which is called in neutral, neither one nor the other. It's very simple. So then we should ask the question. If he says don't kill, we should say, well, is that a negative action or a positive action? Well, if he's suggesting we don't do it, we have to assume it's a negative one. So then we should ask the question, why is it negative? Don't just believe it. Don't be wishy-washy. We need to know why. And I always like to quote this. I do it all the time, but it's so important. It's a fundamental point that underpins all of Buddha's views and all of Buddha's, you know, system of ethics and morality. So when you ask Jesus, this is an important question. I asked a Catholic priest friend, I say this all the time, and it's not just out of gossip. This has got a major, understanding this implies the way we approach our practice. So if you're a Christian or a Muslim, you would agree, and this priest said, when I asked him, I said, why is killing wrong? I said, what makes it wrong? In other words, they call it a sin, a negative action. But why? You've got to ask that. We must ask that question. You can't just accept it or be vague. And he said, by definition, a sin, a negative action, is wrong because God said. Now, that makes total sense if you have the view of a creator. If you have the view of a creator, you have faith in the creator as a being who didn't get caused, who's always existed, and who decides to create the universe, creates me, creates the laws, and who therefore is the boss. And therefore, of course, I must do his wishes. It's completely logical. And I'm not complaining about it. It's just not Buddha's view, that's all. This is a massive difference. On the face of it, it seems very similar. You know, Jesus says don't kill, well, so does Buddha. So does your communist, so does a good communist probably say. So does your grandmother, you know. So it's sort of an agreed upon thing. So Jesus says don't kill, but why? But when you do it, it is wrong because God said. But the Buddha, you ask him, why is killing wrong? And his answer is completely different. He will not say, because I said. That's like asking your doctor, why is smoking cigarettes wrong? She will not say, because I said. Think about that. Why would she tell you? Because you know what? She, from her intelligent observation, has seen that smoking cigarettes can cause cancer. In other words, it's a natural law. This is a massively important term in Buddhism. It's a natural law. It's a natural law. Just like botany, just like mathematics, just like what we call science. No one created botany and then got, and then got copyright of it and then makes flowers grow and makes weeds grow. That's what we think. But for the Buddha, that's a dualistic view, It's a really important point to think about. It's not just like gossip. It's not about sectarian. It's a crucial point. And when we get that, then we will understand that abiding by the laws of karma is we are the beneficiary. Because you go home after you're seeing your doctor and you think, oh, she's not here. She can't see me. Then I will smoke my cigarettes. And because she can't see me, I won't get cancer. That's how we think about morality. We think of it in terms of other people. We mightn't have faith in a creator, but we think, oh, I shouldn't do this because mummy said. I shouldn't do this because the police said. I shouldn't do this because the government said. For the Buddha, that's infantile. It's childish. The reason for the Buddha not to kill. So this is the point now. There's 2 points. He calls it a negative action, and it's the heaviest level of negative action because it harms another. There are different levels of negative actions. The heavier ones are the ones that harm others, like killing, like stealing, you know. So that's how he defines this type of negative action, an action here that harms others. But listen to this, the reason he exhorts us not to do it at this initial level of practice is because guess what, Robina, sweetie pie? It will harm you. And that's what we have to look at. This is the meaning of karma. And this is what we find hard. Because we are so addicted to this idea that if no one sees me do it, oh, I got away with it. It's so instinctive. This dualistic view of ego, you know, if someone doesn't see you do something good, you feel depressed because no one praises you. And we feel we need to be seen to be good, to be called a good girl and to be rewarded. So if no one sees us do a negative action, oh, good, I got away with it. No one saw me do it. This is very deep in our bones. So this view, it's a dualistic view. Don't blame your Catholic mother or your Jewish mother if you've got guilt. This is the view of ego grasping. It's the view of ego. We've made it up, you know. We created this view. It's nonsense, Buddha says. So this fundamental idea of karma is its natural law. It's natural law. It's natural law. This is very shocking to us. We can't get this. We're so addicted to believing it just sounds like religion, you know. Somebody made it up. Jesus made it up and says, don't do this. And if you do it, you're a naughty girl, you get punished. Not like that at all. Not like that at all. There are these fundamental natural laws. We've got to really think about this. So it is natural that when you do an action of killing another, analyze what it is. What are the components of that action? It has to come from the mind. And usually speaking, of course, it comes from anger. You know, anger. Unless you're attached to killing fish, let's say you're a fisherman. Well, it's not out of anger. You love fish, but you're attached to killing them because of habit. So think about that. So this is the point about this. Once we understand this point, we understand the concept of karma from the Buddha's perspective, that this is a natural law that runs the universe. It runs all minds. All minds run within the law of karma. And the main player in karma is the mind. So yes, the hand does the action of killing, but it's the servant of anger in here. And so this is the point about karma. The Buddha is telling us that every millisecond, we discussed this last time, every millisecond what we think and then do and say, that's the very process that first produces the person that I become. Produces the person that I become. When we get that, then it's got nothing to do with punishment and nothing to do with reward. So when your doctor tells you that don't smoke, Robina, because you'll get cancer, she's being compassionate, because she will show you the videos of people with cancerous lungs, not to scare you, but to give you a wake-up call, because you can't bear the thought of that suffering. But when we hear Lama Zopa tell us that if you do this, and when Buddha tells us, you know, there are the hell realms and the animal realms and the spirit realms, all we do is hear it as punishment, because we're so addicted to that dualistic view of punishment and reward. It's deep in our bones. And Buddha says it's infantile nonsense. There's no such thing. We produce ourselves. So if we know that we produce ourselves, and we know that we do not want future suffering, and then we get to learn, which is what we're discussing here, the nuts and bolts of Lord Buddha's view about what suffering is and what causes it, then just like with your doctor, you're going to be watching yourself like a hawk every second, and you will not let a cigarette go anywhere near your mouth. If you're going to get diabetes, you will not let sugar or whatever go anywhere near your mouth, because you are truly having compassion for yourself, and you're not being fundamentalist, you're not being police, you're not being guilty, you're being intelligent. It takes quite a bit to unpack all this, because we've got instinctively this dualistic view of punishment and reward. We always assume somebody out there is running the show, you know, and they're going to punish or reward. It's very deep in our bones. It's got nothing to do with that. So a negative action for Christians, and indeed Muslims, is going against God's will. And I am not criticizing, because if you live your life that way and have faith in a creator, you'll live a very good life. But that's not the Buddha's view, just not. So of course, there are then other rules that Buddha did indeed make up. Like, you know, when he started the Sangha and then they all went begging, you have your bowl and you're supposed to accept whatever somebody gives you. Well, if you've got attachment to rice, he noticed some of the monks, or eventually the nuns, I think, there were nuns around, they finally let nuns become ordained. He noticed some people were attached to rice. So when they got vegetables, they put the vegetables on top of the rice, because then the next person can think they've got no rice, so they'll get rice. So there was a little rule, don't put your rice on the veggies. And then if you're attached to veggies, don't put the veggies on the rice. But that's not a natural law. That's like a, what do they call that? They call natural negativities. And then there are these kind of, you know, mandated ones. Like in your mother's house, she says, you must make your bed, and you're naughty if you don't. That's reasonable, but it's not a natural law. Who cares about unmade beds, you know? But we get these very confused, you know? So natural laws are huge. It's about the fundamentals of morality and ethics. Is all about natural laws. So when we can see that sentient beings don't like getting harmed. Well, first look at yourself. Pretty evident, but look at the ant's behavior when you try to harm it. Look at the dog when you try to take its food. Look at anybody if you shout at them. You can deduce that they don't like being harmed. So that's then an action, then logically an action that I do that harms another is the heaviest negative action. But because, why heaviest? Because first, it harms me. By me programming my mind with anger and me programming my mind with the tendency to kill or steal, what do you think I'm going to produce? And this is the part that's hard for us. We might say, yeah, we like karma, but we hear it as punishment and reward, you know, but it's a natural law. And I mean, I think we understand this so easily when it comes to everything else we do in our lives. We don't think of it like this, but we really get it. You know, in order to become a good cook, everything you think and do and say in relation to cooking is the process that produces the good cook or the bad one. We don't say it like that, but you know, you don't say, well, I can think what I like. If your teacher says put in 4 eggs for the cake, you'll say, well, why can't I put 6 eggs? I can put 17 eggs if I like. You know, don't you tell me what to do. You can put 17 eggs in, but you won't get a cake. You'll get a mess. So morality is the same. Buddha's, the reason you put for, you know, the reason, what I'm saying is, the point is, when you learn the recipe, then you need to learn exactly the right thoughts so that then you will do the right action with your hands so you'll get the right result, the cake. That's not morality, it's common sense. It's exactly the same here. If you want to become a happy, wise person, Buddha says, the method is to refrain from polluting your mind with delusions and refrain from negative actions, because they will produce a suffering person. I mean, that's the part we find hard, because we think of it as punishment. Oh, I'll be rewarded, will I? Oh, I'll be punished. We can't help it. We've got to get past that and try to hear. It's quite subtle. It's more sophisticated thinking. That what I think and I do and I say is the main process that produces the person I become. Just like in becoming a cook or a musician, you know that. You know that. So here we're using, you know, if you're playing music, you're using Bach's rules. So you go by Bach's rules. You happily abide by Bach. So that's the point. But Bach will say, play the note like this. Because you've checked on Bach and you like his music, you will do exactly what he says because he knows what he's talking about. He's the expert. It's the same with the cook, and it's the same with the Buddha. You can decide on Jesus if you like. You can decide on Lenin and become a communist ethicist, whatever you want. Your call. Or make up your own. You do what you like. But here, if you're buying into the Buddha's view, you're not doing what you're not killing because he said so. You're not killing because you've bought into the concept that what you think and do and say produces you. So you are prepared to buy into Buddha's instructions. You agree with the Buddha. You're not feeling forced to do it. You agree to play the piano like that. You agree to put 4 eggs in because you've looked at the cook, you've looked at the musician, and you've looked at Buddha, and you like their methods. And you see the Buddha, the result, and yeah, I want to become like that. So you will abide by the rules of karma. But it's not punishment, and it's not reward. You are the boss. You are the boss. This is hugely important because we've got the deep idealistic view of punishment and reward. It's like I said, don't blame your Catholic mother or your Jewish mother. It's deep in our bones. That view is what we've created. That view is a misconception deep in our bones. It's like a childish view. So we have to grow up, you know. So here we're taking Buddha's view about ethics. Buddha's coming where from? Not revelation, not on high, not from a creator, not mysterious, not mystical, not speculation, but from his own observation, just like a good scientist, you know. Oh, so then we think, what's this got to do with the wisdom wing? Well, I tell you, this is the first step. Abiding by the laws of karma, subduing your body and speech, harnessing the energy of your body and speech, harnessing the energy of your behavior, refraining from harming others, which means refraining from putting seeds in your mind that will ripen as your future suffering, is the very first step for you to begin to start being in control of yourself, because you're trying to develop wisdom. And these are all opposite to wisdom. Anger, attachment, jealousy, low self-esteem are opposite to wisdom. They're totally delusional states of mind, and they're the voices of ego. And they bring the opposite of wisdom, the opposite of clarity, the opposite of happiness, you know. They are the cause of your suffering. This is huge, I tell you. That means we have to have confidence. It's not easy for us to have confidence in this concept of mind being not physical, mind not coming from a creator, mind not being the function of your brain, mind not coming from your mummy and daddy, mind not coming from nowhere, mind coming from the past lives, and everything you think and do and say producing you, which produces your future. That's a very big concept, and it's not the Christian teaching, and it's certainly not the materialist teaching. So we've got to look into it. We're grown-ups. We can decide. No one said, Buddha's not forcing us to believe it. He's not forcing us to believe anything. He says, don't believe me. Listen to it. Think about it. And take it as your working hypothesis, like any body of knowledge. And so you decide, yeah, I like this view. I got to give it a try, you know. This view that I'm in charge, I'm responsible, that I want to abide by the laws of karma. I want to stop killing, stealing, lying, because I am sick of suffering. That's the motivation. Not, oh, because Buddha says. Not because someone will praise you. Because you're sick of suffering. That's the motivation. That's what renunciation means. So when you do the 4 opponent powers, like I started before, the first step is regret. This is the commonest mistake we make. We all think of it as guilt. We think regret, oh, I killed, I lied, I stole, I'm a bad person. We automatically run to that. That's called guilt. That's ridiculous. It's meaningless. It's just guilt is anger, okay? But you're the object of it. Like you say to that other person, you did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person. That's anger. Well, I did this and I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. That's guilt. And it's totally useless. It's a waste of time. It's negative. It's harmful to you, and it's not productive. It doesn't get you anywhere. Another one, a common one that we think people say, well, regret means, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, that's another version of anger. What good is it? It's not useful. It's not productive. What can you do with that? You did do it. You did eat sugar. Oh, I shouldn't have eaten sugar. Oh, I'm a bad person. I ate sugar. Excuse me, just pull your finger out, as we say in Australia, and get on with it and go, well, I better stop. I better do something about it. Because I don't want to get diabetes. I don't want to get cancer. I don't want to suffer in the future. That's the motivation. So you regret it because I do not want suffering. You regret having done that action because it sows a seed in your mind that will ripen in the future as suffering, and you don't want suffering. Just like you regret having eaten that sugar because I don't want diabetes. That's the attitude of renunciation. But we've got to cultivate that view because it doesn't come naturally. Guilt and shame or hiding and denial come naturally because of ego grasping, you know. Regret's the first step. Without regret, you can't go further, can't do anything. So it's like owning responsibility. Well, I did kill, I did steal, I did lie, I did do this, I did do that. You own it, you own it, you own it. Your first step is that, just own it, I did do that. But the first thing we do is we defend ourselves. Oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. You know, not my fault. Someone else's fault, always someone else's fault. Because it's very painful, because we hear it when someone says you didn't do that properly. We then get guilty, or we feel we're being criticized. And the first instinct of ego is to either deny, get guilty, or to blame somebody else. We can't all do that naturally. So this first one, owning it. So the very first step is you regret. You do this practice at the end of the day. As Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do this practice every day. So the first thing you do at the end of the day, you check the actions you've done that day with your body and speech, which are actions that harm others. They're the heaviest. I kicked the dog. I did this. I stole from that. These are actions that harm others first. Then you can regret the actions that only harm you. Because, I mean, the actions that harm others are also harming you, like double trouble actions. But the actions that only harm you, they can come second, you know. Even though the reason for regretting both is you don't want the suffering, because you don't want the grosser suffering, the heavier suffering from harming others. You don't want that suffering. Again, it's not heavier because forget that. You regret, one, the actions that harm others because the suffering for you will be extra terrible. And then two, you regret the actions that just harm you, but they won't be as much because it's just you being harmed. We've got to think about these things, but not in terms of guilt. It's like learning about sicknesses and cancer and what causes them. It's not guilt. It's not shame. It's like revelation, because you know what the hell's going on now. Therefore you know what to do. Same here. So you acknowledge, I did do this, I did do that, I did this. Then you say to yourself, you're talking to yourself, you know what, Robina, I regret having done that. And you have to say because I don't want the future suffering. Because you see, everything we think and do and say has 4 results. These are long term. 1, a type of rebirth. 2, the tendency to keep doing it. 3, it being done to you, especially when it's actions that harm others. And 4, an environmental result. And if you think of these 4 ways that karma ripens, for me, it's really powerful way to get your head around the entirety of karma. If everything we think and do and say produces the person I become, that also includes our experiences, because we meet people, we have a certain kind of body, we have a certain kind of environment. This is what life comes. Life comes with our mind, our body, other people, and environments. So that's all the fruit of our karma. So we look at our lives now, we can do an analysis. Let's just say you look at your life and you see that in general you're quite healthy, that the physical world doesn't harm you too much. You maybe you didn't get COVID, and you breathe pretty well, and the water's not bad where you live. Well, you can go, that's very wonderful. That's the environmental result of non-killing. How amazing. But if you see that you're sick, you get sick easily, you're getting COVID for the 4th time, the water's polluted where you live, the air's really polluted, you go, okay, that's the fruit of my past killing. You take responsibility. That's your environment. You created it. Of course, this is hard for us. It's so abstract for us to think that we created our own environment over many lifetimes. That's a bizarre idea. Absolutely astonishing to us. But this is the Buddha's view. And you try and take it on board, so you own it. That's one result, the environmental result. Then you've got the experience similar to the cause. So look at us. We're very social beings. We live in relation to others. We're born in a mother person's body. We have sisters and mummies and daddies and aunties and uncles and rats and cockroaches in the kitchen. We have neighbors, we have enemies, and we have friends in the world. We have people always impacting upon us on this planet, don't we? All of our entire life since we're born. We can divide all the people we've come across, including all the animals, and they either, harm us or they help us. One or the other. There's no other option. Well, look at the ants that bit you. Look at the dog that snarls at you. Look at the person who won't believe your words. Look at the person in the bank who doesn't give you credit. Look at the person who thinks you're beautiful. Look at the person who gives you a gift. We take all these for granted. We take the good for granted. Well, I deserve good things. Give me more. But they're the fruit of your virtue. So every time someone's kind to you, you go, amazing. That's the fruit of my past virtue. I must have been kind in the past. How incredible. I better do that again. Every time someone doesn't believe your words, you go, oh my God, that's the fruit of my past lying. I better stop lying. You take your life as a real living experience, like your garden. When you look at I use this analogy all the time, and it's really profound. When you have your garden, it's your garden, you know that whatever is in it, you put it there, or you didn't pull it out, one or the other. You don't say, who put weeds in my garden? You don't say, how come there are no roses in my garden? Honey, it's your garden, so you take responsibility. That's the way to see your life. Everything you see and experience at the hands of others, good or bad, and the environment, this is your garden, baby, and you created the cause to have it. This is a stupendously powerful view. It takes time to cultivate it, because it's not how we think now. Then you've got your mind. This is the third way your karma ripens. In your tendencies. So of course we want to blame our mother for that. Well, it's her fault. My mother kills, my mother steals, my mother gets cancer. It's her fault. We don't want to take any responsibility. There's no view that even enables us to take responsibility, because if God created you, you've got to blame God. We don't want to do that. And if your mother created you, of course you're going to blame your mother. We never blame fathers. Always mums get the blame. We know that. That's ridiculous. Whatever's in your mind, your tendency to kill or steal or lie or be good at football, honey child, you brought that with you. And then fourth, you got a body, this human body. This is the fruit of your past virtue. It's like a miracle to get a human body. I mean, there are probably 7 billion mosquitoes in your backyard in one summer evening. Well, look how hard it is to get a human body, and it's the fruit of virtue. So 4 ways karma ripens: the type of body. Animal, human, hell, spirit, God, all these options Buddha has said he has observed to be existing. Each of them is the fruit of their past actions. Then within that body, there is a mind. Or what's in that mind, the tendencies, they're your habits. You brought them with you. 3, how you're seen and treated by others. And 4, the way the very physical world impacts upon you. There's nothing left in your life. That's it. All of it, you're the boss. So this is the essence of the view of karma, to take it on board like this, and you get a real vivid sense and a responsibility of ownership. Instead of guilt and blame and victim and blaming everybody else. We love to do that. So that's karma. This is the basic energy of karma, the basic one. But what's interesting here, we'll look at wisdom at a deeper level, seeing way the world exists. Implicit in the view of karma, implicit, not explicit at the first stages of practice. It's all about wisdom. It's leading us to realize emptiness. It's leading us to realize emptiness. Why? Which is the ultimate wisdom. Why? Because cause and effect and karma is a brilliant first example. Sorry, dependent arising. Dependent arising is the king of logics to prove wisdom, to prove emptiness, which is the ultimate wisdom, okay? And the king of logics, according to Lama Tsongkhapa, paraphrased by Lama Yeshe, the king of logics, to prove emptiness, to get the ultimate wisdom, to cut the root of the garbage in your mind so you can be free of all suffering, which is wisdom, it's dependent arising. And there are 3 levels of dependent arising. First one is cause and effect. And a brilliant example of the law of cause and effect is karma. Cause and effect is also seed brings fruits and all the logic of the outside world, but the inner causes, karma. So the explicit teaching at the beginning of all the practices here, like I'm talking, abide by the laws of karma, control your body and speech, don't harm others. Why? Because you're sick of suffering. You have to hear with suffering now and in the future. That's what motivates you to give up harming others. And the implicit thing here is because you start to take responsibility and not feel like this victim who didn't ask to get born, you know, this child, like we all feel, this innocent victim, it's not my fault. You start to take responsibility that I am the fruit of my past actions. So this already is loosening the grip of ego grasping, the root delusion. This happens. So already moving towards emptiness, although it's not evident. This is the very first scope of practice. We grow up, start to grow up, take responsibility, stop blaming others, stop feeling like a victim, stop feeling like we're being blamed, not fair, poor me, it's not my fault. This is very deep in our bones. It sounds cruel, but Lama, that's the function of ego. And Lama Yeshe would say it's a self-pity me. Ego is self-pity me. Because ego is this feeling of this separate I. And its nature is fear. Why? Because it's a fantasy that doesn't exist. We've been believing it for 42 eons. So the fear that has built up in us is tremendous. This is the root delusion, this belief in an intrinsic, separate, independent me, an innocent victim me who didn't ask to get born, whose fault it is not. And to whom bad and good things happen unfairly. The good, I don't care, the unfair, give me more. Because that's attachment. The bad, how dare that happen to me? How dare you criticize me? How dare you blame me? I don't deserve it. This is attachment and aversion. They're the main voices of ego grasping, of ignorance, and they're the three poisons. So karma loosens the grip of that ego grasping, that self-pity me. It's intense. It's marvelous. It's wonderful. You should be so happy. That's implicit. It's not expressed at the first scope at all. But it's what comes from practicing, abiding by the laws of karma. Which means you have to understand them. You can't say you like botany but never study it. That's stupid. Oh, I believe in botany. What good is that? Oh, I believe in mathematics. What good is that? And we leave it usually at that. And this is part of our problem as Buddhists. We conflate liking Buddhism and knowing Buddhism. It's the biggest mistake we make. You have to know it. You can't just say, I like math. No, I'm very happy you do, but you got to learn it. Then you can make use of it. You can believe in 1 + 1 is 2 as long as you like, but you won't know how to apply it if you don't learn it. Same here. We can go, yeah, karma, yeah, behavior, yeah, ethics, blah, blah. You have to learn the nuts and bolts. Then it becomes experiential. Then you're in charge. Then you know what you're doing, you know. So it's the very first level of getting wisdom. Now you go to the middle scope, high school. What time is it? And now we get to the root of the problem, the mind. The mind that informs the behavior. Now we've subdued to some degree, harnessed to some degree, the servants of our mind. We keep the third piece of cake on the plate. We don't jump on, your partner to have sex the third time. Only 2 will do. You don't watch a third hour of your video games. You control your body and speech. This is controlling your body and speech, first level. You might be full of thoughts all day of jumping on another girl, but you don't do it. That's what discipline is. That's what practice is. Control your body and speech first. Now we can get to the root of it, the mind. So the explicit teaching here, and this is all the wisdom wing as well. Now we're getting closer to the idea of getting some clarity and wisdom because it's the mind now. So the explicit teaching here is to learn to see how aversion, attachment, the 3 poisons and all the other delusions cause us so much pain. Again, we get guilty instead. Oh, I shouldn't be angry. I'm a naughty person. Oh, I shouldn't be depressed. I'm a naughty person. I shouldn't be, proud. We get guilt. No, we've got to see our mind, understand the delusions. And this is really, really hard because we don't pay attention to the mind until it's vomiting out the mouth or until you're having a panic attack or until you're inert in bed and you can't get out because you've got depression. We only notice because we're so addicted to our bodies We only notice what's going on in our mind when our body expresses it. And this is way too late. That's why if you harness the energy of your body first and then get some kind of meditation practice, you can begin to see what the hell is happening inside you before it gets to the mouth. Before it expresses itself as behavior. That's the skill. This is more sophisticated level. That's why it's high school. So what are the main delusions here? There's thousands, 84,000 they talk about, and there are 84,000 solutions. But they all subsume into the three poisons, as Ling Rinpoche tells us. 21,000 of those neuroses are all rooted in the first of the three, ignorance. 21,000 are rooted in attachment. 21,000 are rooted in aversion or anger. And the fourth 21,000 have got a character of all three. It's a very coherent map of the mind, But these three, which sounds so simple, the three poisons. I mean, it sounds so pathetic. It almost sounds like childish. You won't get a therapist, a neuroscientist, a psychiatrist who'll get the essence of all the delusions in the mind down to three. There's no way, there's no simple method like that. So it's misleading to think it's simplistic. It's totally profound. So the root delusion, ignorance, there are various levels of ignorance, but the root ignorance, the root maripa, which is really about wisdom, but we don't deal with that yet. We wait till the third scope when we get to the sixth perfection, when we really get wisdom, when we're now prepared, we're having done first and second. But here, ignorance in general can be ignorance about karma, ignorance about, right and wrong, ignorance about, in lots of ways, ignorance, ordinary common garden ignorance, like a sort of a stupidity type ignorance, or not knowing certain things that cause so much suffering. They say the bodhisattvas have the greatest compassion for us, not because we haven't even realized emptiness yet, but because we do not understand cause and effect, karma. We don't realize that we're in charge. We cause our own happiness and own suffering. This is a tragedy. So the two effectively what play out in the life is attachment and aversion. And in fact, the main one there is attachment. I mean, Four Noble Truths, we learn about the Four Noble Truths here, which is laying out Buddha's view very clearly. There is suffering, there are causes, you can get rid of them, and how to do it. Effectively, you can say that Buddha is telling us that attachment effectively is the main cause of suffering in our lives. We are dominated by attachment. This realm is a realm of attachment. This is the result. This realm is the result of attachment. This body of ours is a result of attachment. Who we are, how we're shaped, whether they have penises or vaginas or breasts or whatever, we keep changing now and want to become different things, all this. But this is all the fruit of attachment. We're not made by anybody. We're not some accident. Everything the way our body is shaped is the fruit of attachment. How we look, the pieces we have over eons of time, we have produced this kind of body, this realm of existence, which basically are the five sense objects. The world out there are the five sense objects. So we're made up, so attachment is the main one, and we've got this body of the five senses, haven't we? We created this over eons of time. It's like karmic evolution. Can't blame God, can't blame somebody else for making you. That's a joke. So attachment, we have to understand attachment. Simple word, profound meaning. It's multifaceted, like I talk all the time. The very first level of attachment, primordial, is dissatisfaction. I'm never enough. I don't have enough. And what I do is not enough. What I get is not enough. What I achieve is not enough. Its default assumption is I'm not enough. I don't have enough. This is the greatest pain of attachment. And why? Because we practice attachment for eons. And why does it cause dissatisfaction? This is where we have to look into the wisdom side of it. The explicit teaching here is that attachment is a disturbing emotion. Anger is a disturbing emotion. Jealousy is a disturbing emotion. And this is the explicit teaching here in this scope of practice. And when we begin to get this increases our wish to be free of suffering. We're sick of suffering. So we've got to see this suffering aspect of attachment and aversion. And that's hard too, because we prefer to blame others. I'm allowed to be angry. Look what she did to me. So it's hard to own the anger, to own the attachment, and therefore to see the suffering as causing me. Because we don't think the anger causes suffering. We think it's the boyfriend who did the action, or the person who criticized me. It's their fault. They made me angry. It's not my fault. So this is powerful also, to come to terms with it, to own it. It's my anger, my tendency to see them, and then to see the pain it causes me, not the guilt. That's useless. Don't just think, oh, I'm angry, I'll hurt others. Yes, you will, but you're hurting yourself. And then even harder to see the suffering of attachment. But why? This is the wisdom aspect now, and this is hard to see. This is implicit. But as we start to practice giving up attachment, we start to see this. So the key function of all the delusions, all the neuroses, for the Buddha's perspective, and this we really learn about in the great scope when we get to the sixth perfection, when we start to get insight into emptiness and learn dependent arising and everything, we start to realize the way delusions function is why we suffer. And this is the key thing to understand Buddhist psychology and why we suffer. These delusions, which have the aspect of being disturbing, they've got the other aspect of being delusional. And this is the key point. All these delusions are conceptual states of mind, stories deep in the bones of our being that we have been believing in for eons that are now totally, completely hardwired into our mind. Eons of habit, of following attachment and aversion. So it's impossible at the moment to see that they're based on being conceptions, but as we start digging deeper, we're going to see this. So attachment is a conceptual story. Aversion is a conceptual story in the mind. And so why attachment has the energy, causes dissatisfaction, because attachment, aversion, jealousy, all of the delusions have this particular function of being misconceptions, of not being valid concepts, insofar as the object they cause us to see out there doesn't exist. So attachment, its key function is it exaggerates, embellishes the deliciousness of the object. Aversion or anger embellishes the ugliness of the object. It's in this way that these conceptual stories, these misconceptions, misrepresent the outside world to us. So, attachment causes us to totally believe that cake will make me happy. That cake is more delicious than it really is. So then the other component of attachment internally is this emotional hunger that then grasps at the cake, frantically waiting for the happiness to come. And then what will happen instead is bitter disappointment. Because after 4 pieces, it's now turned into aversion and you want to vomit. So, of course, you've built up this disappointment over eons of time. And so you wake up in this life with this profound dissatisfaction. It's disappointment. We live in disappointment. Never enough. No matter what I get, it's not enough. And our default view of I is I'm not enough. I have not achieved enough. I am not good enough. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. No matter what I get, it's not enough. No matter how much I eat, it's not enough. We just default never enough. It is the most tragic consequence of believing and following for eons attachment. So the first primordial energy of attachment is dissatisfaction, which naturally causes us to have emotional hunger, which then causes us to hanker after something out there. And then depending on your karma with it, you grasp onto that object or this action or that event, and you cling to it and over-exaggerate its deliciousness and then believe like a vampire that when I get it, it'll make me happy. And then it can only bring disappointment. And the more the attachment, the more the emotional hunger, the more the disappointment, the more the dissatisfaction. So this is the nightmare of attachment. But it's a honey-covered razor, baby, you can't see it. All this is leading us to emptiness. All this is leading us to wisdom. Because the key function of all the delusions, including the root delusion that exaggerates the very status of the very ontological status itself of the I, all of them exaggerate. That's their function. So we begin to get an inkling of this in the middle scope. The explicit teaching is the disturbingness of attachment, but the implicit one is this lie in our mind that misrepresents that object, makes it look more delicious than it is, such that we panic and think when I don't get it, I'll be lacking something. That's the habit we have to break, because it's not true. It's a lie. The pain is real, but the view is wrong. It's a mistake, misconception. Any questions before we finish in 20 minutes?
Yeah, this is Jack. What's a good way to get a handle on harsh speech?
You mean somebody else's or your own?
My own.
Okay, good. It's a good one, Jack. I know. I know it's so when we so it's explicitly speech, okay, but when we, of course, when we understand it, we would agree that it comes from anger and impatience. Would you agree with that? What do you think, Jack? How would you say what drives
Yes.
it? Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, impatience, anger,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, good. Anger. Okay, so then this is helpful. I mean, the simple answer, if it's related just to speech, is to make a strong decision. I mean, we'll go into this in a second. To make a strong decision, when you do your four opponent powers at the end of the day, first you'd regret the harsh speech because you're sick of the suffering yourself. Then the second step, you have compassion for those you harsh speech to because you see you harm others and you've got to have compassion for them as well. And then you do the purification. And then the fourth step is you make a decision. It's the fourth step. I don't know if you do this practice, but this is one approach. You'd make this firm decision. Okay, Jack, for 24 hours, I'm going to control my speech like a hawk. And then you go to sleep with that habit in your mind, that wish, that strong determination. The next morning you remember it, and throughout that day you have that in the front of your mind. I've made a decision. I'm going to control my harsh speech. Don't be surprised that eventually you'll get the habit of that, because we never seem. What we tend to do is get, oh my God, I'm bad. I shouldn't have done that. I wish I didn't do it again. But we don't make a firm decision. Everything exists on the tip of the wish, intention. I will. So that's quite helpful. So every day, if you simply make that decision, before you know it, you're going to grab yourself and it won't get out the mouth. It'll take time. But until we decide, Jack, this is a really major point. It's got to be very intentional. Not just, oh, I shouldn't have done it. I wish I didn't do it. I'm bad. You don't understand what I'm saying. That's the direct response. But of course, the more we understand where it comes from, because I know all about harsh speech, I shoot things out my mouth very quickly. I mean, when we understand it comes from anger in the mind, and then we understand anger is thwarted attachment. So attachment's the main problem. This attachment in this case is to get what I want. Attachment, is I want things to be a certain way. I want it to be this way. He should be that way. That shouldn't be this way. This should be that way. That's the really energy of attachment here. This attachment is not like for cakes or money. This attachment is to get what I want. And that then brings annoyance, irritation, frustration when people dare to behave in a way my attachment doesn't want. And then that brings anger, and then it bursts out the mouth. You're following me, Jack?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, oh, that's more.
Understanding the evolution of it helps, but the explicit teaching, and don't underestimate it, is you make that firm decision. I will, even just for 24, you can't say, I will never badmouth again. No, the habit's too strong. But maybe for 24 hours. And we all know when we really decide to do something, that's when we start to do it. But if you don't decide, it's not a minor point, it's a very major point. And you've got to start with that, Jack. Do you see my point? That means you have confidence that you want to do it. Do you understand? But it's got to start with the first one, which is regret. And it's got to be for your own sake, not guilt. You say to yourself, Jack, I'm sick of the habit. I'm sick of this habit because look at the harm it does to me. Then you can have compassion for others. Then you do the practice and you purify it. Then you make a decision. Do you get my point here?
Yes, yeah, and I will do that.
Good one. Good on you, Jack. Who else? And it's all our habits, the same thing, We've got to have confidence in this process, knowing that we can change. And the first step is to decide, to regret it, to have compassion, to do the practice, and then decide. It's very powerful. Seems almost simple, but it's not. So it can't be just guilt, Guilt is useless. It just makes you all tied up in knots and doesn't help. I'm not saying you're getting guilty, Jack. I'm just saying for all of us, we tend to have this, we're going to make a mess out of it. We get it all caught up, twisted up, and, So anybody, other questions? Please.
Yes, Venerable Robina. This is Anne.
Who
Anne,
is it? Who is it?
Anne.
Anne. Hello, Anne. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Yes, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. I was so upset that we couldn't get together this weekend.
I
But
know,
thank you for
darling. I wish I could have
being
been there. I know.
there. I have a sick cat right now. She's
Yes.
been sick for a couple months,
Yes.
and she's my baby.
Yes.
And every once in a while, a little flying bug gets into my apartment.
Yes.
And I know this is wrong because it's killing, and I haven't done it yet, but that's only because I tried to snap it, and I haven't actually succeeded, but I know that I do not want a bug to spread a possible disease on my cat.
What's the
And
bug? What kind of bug is it? It gets in?
what's that?
What kind of
What kind of
creature
bug?
is it that gets into your house?
It's just some little thing that flies
And why do you think it brings
like
disease?
a mosquito.
I know, I understand, yeah, but why would it bring disease necessarily? I know what you're saying. I don't like mosquitoes either. Why would it
If
bring?
it bites you, okay, and gets into your blood, it has the potential to make somebody sick.
I understand. So I know. So then the thing is, I understand your point. So of course you don't want it to harm your cat. You don't want it to harm yourself, and of course you also don't want to harm the mosquito. It's not easy. I agree with you because this is very fraught. So all we can do is do our best to get rid of the little creature. All we can do is do our best to get the creature out. We have to sort of start with the thought to try not to harm. We have to do our best, and sometimes life is quite difficult and almost like we feel we haven't got any choices. We've got to start with the wish to not try to harm. And if you grab and maybe you blow a mantra on the mosquito, maybe I don't know what, you just do your best, Anne, and be reasonable. That's all I can say, sweetheart. And that's not attachment. You make that compassion. It's for everybody. Compassion for your cat, compassion for you, and even compassion for the mosquito. But you try to do what you can. Sometimes we can't prevent things. We know that. We can't. Even if you kill that mosquito, another one might get in, and then 17 more. So we can't win. So we've got to start with the wish not to harm, and then be as practical as we can to try and avoid the harm. You get my point, Anne?
And I was told that there's no such thing as instant karma, but my cat's on prednisone for 2 months, and my doctor just put me on prednisone.
Wow, there you go. It's the two of you together. Wow. But is it helping? It's helping you both. Is it helping you, Anne?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm hoping it's helping your cat
No.
as well. We do what we can. Use whatever tools we can, Anne. Take care of yourself, darling.
Much.
And maybe you should say some medicine Buddha mantras into your cat's ear. That could bless him. What do you think?
Thank you.
Do
Thank
I?
you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, sweetheart. Who else? Some questions, please, people. Anything at all. Anything you like.
Go ahead. Yeah, come closer.
Oh,
The thing is right here.
oh, hi. Oh, it's Luciana.
Hello, Luciana.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Good.
I would like some of your wisdom about dealing with or how to handle disappointments with
Yes.
family, friends, relationships.
Very
When
good.
disappointment comes up,
Yeah.
how to deal with that in the way of the Buddhist teaching.
I understand, darling. So you mean, so when people basically don't do what we expect, is that what you're saying?
What we expect or how we feel we may need it.
How we feel we may need it. What do you mean by that?
Well, how
Give an
we feel
example.
we
Give
may
an example.
Well, if, for example, I'm feeling sad and I feel that I need to have some acknowledgement of that from a family member
I
or
hear it.
friend,
Yeah.
and yet it doesn't happen.
Okay, I see I do understand, darling, very well. So this is a huge one for all of us, Luciana, in our relationships. It's just massive. And the only way to understand it really is to understand the way Buddha describes attachment, and one of the key, this is the cause of the suffering. On one level, there's nothing wrong with expecting your mother or your sister or your husband to be empathetic. In a relationship, there's an assumption that you'll be kind to your hubby and he will empathize with you. So we have that reasonable expectation, but the real point is, as you're just saying, what to do when you don't get it. And that's where we start the pain that comes from expecting in a neurotic way. There's a regular expectation. Like if you and I have a date to meet for dinner at 6 o'clock every Tuesday, it's reasonable that we each expect the other to turn up on time. You understand my point?
Yes.
But what
Yes.
now but what you're getting at is, what if I perpetually end up an hour late or half an hour late? We've got to start knowing we've got to make some decisions here. So let's just say you've got
Yes.
a husband who is not being, I have no idea who you're talking about, but let's just pretend you've got a husband who doesn't show much empathy. Then you know this person by now, seeing you've been living with them for a few years, and you know that you would love to have some empathy or a bit of a hug. And that's reasonable if he's your hubby, but you also know that the pain in you will start, not because he simply doesn't give you the hug, but because of the attachment, this aching feeling inside us. And this is the point about attachment here, that somehow this attachment is really a symptom of me not being enough on my own. We always feel we have to have someone else approve of us, someone else acknowledge us, someone else make us feel good. We don't think we can make ourselves feel good. We don't think we can deal with our own disappointment. And that's the power of, that's what we have to learn to do. Are you seeing what I'm saying? It's not an
Yes, I
easy
do.
job. It's a huge job, you know, because in the end, when you're being practical, you know your hubby, you know what he's like, you know he's only capable of a certain level. And the other crucial thing is this, like with me, your friend, always turning up late for our dinner appointments. At some point, you've got to make a decision, because you get to see Robina. She's always late. She's completely hopeless. But you've got to decide either one thing or the other, Luciana. You've got to decide that you love Robina enough to put up with her rubbish and know that she'll always be late. Or you decide, I can't cope with this any longer. And you tell me, I'm sorry, Robina, we have to cut our appointments and I can't meet you again. So instead of always being the victim, well, let Robina, she goes on, she never comes on time. You've got to make a decision. And if you make the decision when you know your hubby's like this and you'll accept it, it'll be less pain. So you've got to be feeling whatever occurs, you own the fact that you're in that relationship and that you choose to continue it. Because, honey, if you can't bear it, you've got to quit the relationship. It sounds brutal, but this is the point. We either change the situation or we change our mind. That's the answer, Luciana. It's pretty intense.
So-
You understand me?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a big issue. I think, as you said, for all of us, you know, people
For
talk
all
about
of us, Luciana, it's the same for all of us. But the trouble is, it's sort of like, you know, let's say I come to you, you're my friend, and I tell you about my lousy job. You know, it's not giving me what I want. It's not fulfilling my expectations. I complain about the boss. I complain about the colleagues, and you're trying to help me. And you go, well, you know, Robina, have you ever thought of getting another job, of leaving the job? And I'll go, no, I can't do that. And no, it's not. Why should I change the job? I haven't got the problem. And then you say, well, Robina, if you're going to decide to stay in the job, perhaps you have to learn to change your mind, change your attitude. No, I can't do that. It's a crummy job. And that's our problem. We stay stuck in a bad relationship, complaining about the other person, but never able to either change the relationship or change our mind. And they're the only two options. And it's pretty intense. But when we can do this, we feel that we're in charge of our life, Luciana, and we will suffer less.
Right. So to go about changing one's mind or changing my mind, right?
Yep.
So what would be the steps to take?
You first have to accept this person is incapable.
Okay.
I mean, they might be capable, and then, I mean, I don't know the situation. I don't want to ask you about it, but we have to know the other person. We have to know their mind. We have to know what they're capable of. If it's your husband and he's like a complete deluded maniac, you've got to make a decision. Well, I know he's a deluded maniac and I've chosen to keep living with him. That means you've chosen him, warts and all. You have to accept that this is who he is. That's the major change, Luciana. And if you think he's a maniac and you can't cope with it, then you better leave him. You see my point?
I see it.
But we always think he should be this way, and why isn't he this way? And he should change. What do you mean I should change? But I mean, we've got to see the other person and know their capability, know know what they're capable of. And then we make a decision. If he's not going to change, I'm going to accept this is who he is. This is huge, Luciana. You see my point?
Yes, I do.
Good.
It helps a lot. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you so much.
Do you have time for one more?
Plenty more. Come on, yes, please talk.
First of all, let me thank you very much for your teaching and wisdom today. It's just
Good.
fabulous.
Very
Really
happy.
appreciate it.
Good.
I recently became aware of the fact that I have allowed my mind to create my story that has run my life, my entire journey.
Well, good on you, Bob. That's pretty profound. Wow.
And now I'm at this crossroads of saying, what's next? Because I appreciate the fact that I have absolutely not been in the driver's seat of my journey. I've been
Amazing,
totally
Bob.
reacting to
Yeah, that's it.
everything.
Yeah.
How do I move forward in a more healthy, positive, beneficial way?
You're asking that question, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, okay, then. So really, it's sort of look at it in a more granular way. I mean, it might mean you have to change a relationship. It might mean you have to change the way you eat. I mean, something like that's fairly easy to make a decision. But if it's like your whole life that you're talking about, that's kind
I'm
of
talking,
big, you know?
yeah, not granular, not granular. I'm talking about having a new perception of me.
Well, okay, that takes time. You're sort of like you've decided I'm going to become a carpenter. You got to start with you learn. I mean, here we're talking the Buddha's view to it. Every word I'm saying here is all part of the answer. So, I mean, if you have a practice, don't you? I mean, you have a practice,
Yeah.
right? This stuff.
Yeah.
I would say then, Bob, you just keep deepening whatever you know and growing your practice. You're doing it all now. You're on the path, Bob. There's no magical answer, but you've got a certain revelation about something. So that just means strengthen your practice, strengthen your vows, strengthen your commitment. Just strengthen all your commitment to your path and just keep moving. And you already have made changes. And this is the point. The fact that you can see this is a great sign of your success. So the other one is you must rejoice in how hard you have been practicing, Bob, that you've got to this point. So rejoice in what you have achieved already. That's a major, major thing we must do and we often forget to do. You get my point here?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just keep moving, Bob, but rejoice in how much you've achieved so far. That's
Thank
a
you.
massively important point. Good, Bob. Keep moving. I rejoice. Amazing. Well done. Hello, Joey. Yes. What's the question, darling?
Hello, Venerable.
Yes.
Is there something that you can recommend for dealing with extreme irritability?
I just said before, I gave the long answer to Jack.
Okay, so it's the same answer then.
That's exactly he asked it in another way. He said
Gotcha.
harsh speech. You mightn't do harsh speech. Irritability is anger, but it's sort of small anger. It's not as if you're screaming and shouting. It's like annoyed in the mind, frustrated, irritated because your attachment. I mean, this is a brutal answer because attachment is very subtle, Joey. We can't even see it. The only time we're going to see attachment, which always wants what I want, is when it doesn't get what it wants. That's the interesting point. If you always got what you wanted, you wouldn't be irritable. Do you understand? But we don't get what we want. And that's why we get irritable. So irritability or frustration is a sign of your attachment. So that's the big learning. So keep slowly knowing that and just learn to be patient, learn to be satisfied. And I mean, it takes time, Joey, because it's very instinctive energy. It's very old and deep inside us. You can't make it go overnight. Do you understand? But be aware of it and just keep practicing every day, darling. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Good, sweetheart. Who else there? Is anybody else? Or who else is there? What else is it? Anybody else? So we haven't really got to actual wisdom yet, but maybe we have to have another day to do that. Okay, people? Don, what do you think? And then we haven't got to compassion either. We haven't even got to compassion either. So, and all of this is the wisdom wing. All of this is put you together so that now you can help others do the same. So maybe we can have another date, another time. We can sort of finish it, Don. What do you think? We just keep going. I mean, I'm not traveling much anymore and I haven't got many things on my schedule. So we can pop things in occasionally and we can get a lot done on Zoom. It's okay, look, 40 of us here participating.
Yeah, I think we're talking about this is Jack. I think we're talking about trying to reschedule another visit in a couple of months.
Good. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. But also we got Zoom as well. Don't forget Zoom. I find Zoom great.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, of course it is. But I find Zoom great. So let's just do a bit of both. It's a no worries, okay? So all you people be happy, keep moving, never give up. And as I said to Bob, we have to rejoice. We've got to remember to rejoice. We never do that. That's the irony of this attachment. No matter what we achieve, we're always thinking I should have achieved more. We're always defaulted, I haven't achieved enough. You might get to grade 497, you think, oh, I still haven't got enough. You've got to be happy with our progress. And then we can go to the next level of practice. It's very, very, very important. It gives us real courage, All right, people? Changchub sem chogren po che ma ke panam ke guchi ke panyampa me pa yang gong ne gong du fo ba shog. Please, Nina, give me the prayer. Swift return of Lama Zopa. Quick, Nina. Nina, prayer. Nina. So slow. She says it must be because it's in Portugal. Long way to Portugal. Okay, we'll do a little prayer. This aspiration that Lama Rinpoche come back quickly. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge, of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. His Holiness Dalai Lama wrote this prayer for us to say. So, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings who suddenly departed to peace, such a great loss for all of us, no question. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean and the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay, darling people, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much, Venerable. Please leave long.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you,
That's great.
Venerable.
Thank
you.
you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
Are there course notes for this class? Does anyone know?
There should be.
No.
It is being recorded.
No,
Are there
were
course notes?
no, there were no course notes for the class. She